Welcome to English Mastery Voyage channel.
Kelvin's Family Beach Day. Kelvin's family had been eagerly anticipating their beach day for weeks. The summer heat had been relentless, and they were all excited to escape the sweltering city for the refreshing ocean breeze. Kelvin, his parents, and his younger sister, Emily, packed their bags the night before, ensuring they had everything they needed for a fun-filled day. Early the next morning, they loaded the car with beach towels, umbrellas, sunscreen, and a cooler filled with sandwiches, fruits, and drinks. The drive to the beach was filled with laughter and cheerful anticipation. The scenic route took them through lush green fields and quaint little towns, adding to their excitement. As they arrived at the beach, the sound of crashing waves and the salty sea air greeted them. Kelvin and Emily couldn't wait to dip their toes in the water. They quickly spread out their towels on the warm sand and set up the umbrellas for some much-needed shade. Kelvin's parents reminded them to apply sunscreen before heading into the water. "We don't want any sunburns to ruin our day," his mom said, smiling. Once they were protected from the sun, Kelvin and Emily ran toward the shoreline. The cool water felt amazing on their feet, and they laughed as the waves gently lapped against their legs. They spent hours playing in the water, splashing around, and building sand castles. Kelvin's dad joined them in the water, teaching them how to body surf and ride the waves. Emily giggled as she successfully caught her first wave, while Kelvin felt a rush of excitement mastering the technique. Their mom captured these joyous moments with her camera, ensuring they had plenty of memories to look back on. After a morning full of fun, they took a break for lunch. They enjoyed their sandwiches and fruit under the shade of the umbrellas, listening to the soothing sounds of the ocean. Kelvin and Emily shared stories and jokes, making their parents laugh. In the afternoon, they decided to take a walk along the beach. They collected seashells and marveled at the tiny crabs scurrying along the sand. Kelvin found a particularly beautiful shell and gave it to Emily as a keepsake. She beamed with gratitude and hugged her brother tightly. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with hues of pink and orange, they knew it was time to pack up and head home. They reluctantly gathered their belongings, savoring the last moments of their perfect beach day. On the drive back, they reminisced about their adventures and made plans for their next trip to the beach. Kelvin felt a sense of contentment, knowing that days like this were what made summer truly special. Ethan's farm visit. Ethan was a city boy who had never visited a farm before. One summer, his parents decided it would be a great idea for him to spend a week at his cousin Jack's farm. Ethan was both excited and nervous about the trip. He had heard so many stories from Jack about the animals and the daily activities on the farm, but he had never experienced it himself. When Ethan arrived at the farm, he was greeted by the sight of vast fields, green pastures, and a variety of animals. Jack was waiting for him with a big smile. "Welcome to the farm, Ethan. We're going to have a lot of fun," Jack exclaimed. The first thing Jack showed Ethan was the barn, where they kept the cows and goats. Ethan was amazed by how big the cows were and how friendly the goats seemed. Jack taught Ethan how to milk a cow, a task that was both fascinating and challenging for Ethan. Every morning, Ethan and Jack would wake up early to feed the chickens. Ethan enjoyed collecting the fresh eggs and hearing the chickens cluck happily. He also learned how to gather hay for the horses and clean their stalls. It was hard work, but Ethan found it rewarding. One day, Jack took Ethan to the orchard, where they picked apples. The trees were full of ripe, juicy apples, and Ethan loved the sweet smell that filled the air. They spent hours picking apples, and then enjoyed a picnic under the shade of a large tree. Jack's mom had packed sandwiches, apple pie, and lemonade for them. It was the perfect way to relax after a busy morning. Ethan's favorite part of the farm was the pond. Every afternoon, Jack and Ethan would go swimming in the cool water. They would race each other to see who could swim the fastest and would sometimes just float on their backs, looking up at the clear blue sky. As the week went on, Ethan became more comfortable with farm life. He learned how to ride a horse and even helped Jack's dad fix a broken fence. The fresh air, physical activity, and being surrounded by nature made Ethan feel more alive than he ever had in the city. On the last day of his visit, Ethan realized how much he had grown to love the farm. He thanked Jack and his family for their hospitality and promised to come back again. As he left, he carried with him not only the memories of a wonderful week, but also a newfound appreciation for the simple, hard-working life on the farm. Mrs. Clover learns smartphone photography. Clover was a kind and curious elderly woman who loved nature and the beauty of the world around her. She enjoyed tending to her garden, feeding the birds, and taking long walks in the park. However, there was one thing that always intrigued her, but seemed beyond her grasp: technology. Her grandchildren often visited her and shared stories about their latest gadgets and apps. One day, her granddaughter Emily showed her some beautiful photos she had taken with her smartphone. Mrs. Clover was amazed at the quality and detail of the pictures. She marveled at how a small device could capture such stunning images. "Emily, can you teach me how to take photos with a smartphone?" Mrs. Clover asked with genuine interest. "Of course, Grandma," Emily replied enthusiastically. "Let's start with the basics." Emily handed Mrs. Clover her old smartphone and showed her how to turn it on and open the camera app. She explained the different buttons and functions such as focusing, zooming, and adjusting the exposure. Mrs. Clover listened attentively, determined to learn. Over the next few days, Mrs. Clover practiced using the camera. She took photos of her blooming flowers, the birds that visited her garden, and the scenic views during her walks. She was thrilled with her progress and enjoyed experimenting with different angles and lighting. One sunny afternoon, Emily and Mrs. Clover went to the park together. They walked along the winding paths, surrounded by lush greenery and colorful flowers. Emily encouraged Mrs. Clover to take photos of anything that caught her eye. Mrs. Clover eagerly snapped pictures of the vibrant roses, the majestic oak trees, and the playful ducks in the pond. "Grandma, you're doing great," Emily praised her. "Your photos are beautiful. You have a natural talent for photography." Mrs. Clover felt a sense of accomplishment and pride. She had always admired the work of photographers, but never imagined she could do it herself. Thanks to Emily's patient guidance, she discovered a new hobby that brought her immense joy. That evening, Mrs. Clover and Emily sat together and reviewed the photos on the smartphone. Emily showed her how to edit and enhance the images, adding filters and adjusting the colors. Mrs. Clover was amazed at how much she could do with just a few taps on the screen. "Thank you, Emily," Mrs. Clover said with a warm smile. "I never thought I could learn something like this at my age. You've opened up a whole new world for me." Emily hugged her grandma tightly. "I'm so glad you enjoyed it, Grandma. Photography is a wonderful way to capture memories and share the beauty of the world. Keep practicing, and you'll only get better." From that day on, Mrs. Clover continued to explore the art of smartphone photography. She found joy in capturing the moments that made her heart sing and sharing them with her loved ones. Her newfound passion brought her closer to her grandchildren and added a new dimension to her life.